Hello, Sudhir sir.
Yeah, Harish.
Sir. We'll start in 2-3 minutes, sir.
You'll start in
2-3 minutes, sir. We'll
two,
wait
three
for
minutes.
another
Okay,
2.
done.
Yeah. Session. Hello, everyone. Sudhir sir, we'll
Harish.
start now, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Dear participants, welcome you back again for the session 8 on performance management and effective feedback. It is our pleasure that we have once again Mr. Sudhir Sosale, visiting professor, Department of Chemical Engineering in IIT Mysuru. He'll be delivering his second session, and we are very fortunate to have you again, sir. I welcome you once again for the session, and over to you, sir.
Thanks, Harish. So let me start off. So the rules of the presentation are just like yesterday. You can ask any kind of question at any point in time. Harish, if you are kind enough, whenever a question is popped up, do stop me. Ask me the question, I'll stop there, explain the concept, and then move along. Because whatever I'm going to talk will be from a practical standpoint. How I have seen performance management done, and how is a performance review delivered in real life is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so whenever you have a question, whenever something in theory is not what I'm exactly speaking, you please ask me. I will clarify as to what my interpretation of the theory is. Another general guideline, there is if you look into the material that's available on the net on performance management and feedback, you will find huge amount of material. There are lots of textbooks also written up. But these are all theoretical aspects. And in practice, very few of them are actually used. So what I'm going to explain to you today is all going to be from a practical standpoint as to what most companies adopt and what I have used in my career spanning 15, 20 years now in the corporate life. So that said, let me start off. So today's presentation will be about uh, performance management and feedback. I'm going to focus a lot on feedback today because this is not an easy thing at all. And for people in the academics line, this is very important actually, feedback. Receiving and giving feedback is such an important facet of an academician. I thought I should be spending more time on this. I will explain performance management as well. So, what I'm going to talk about three main aspects: the performance management process, the performance appraisal part, and the performance feedback. Okay. And just like yesterday, I'm going to have lots and lots of stories because I do believe that the value add that comes from me is from my experiences in real life. So most of the stories that I'm going to talk about will all be from my personal life and what I have seen. And I will use a few classical case studies as well. So let's look at the overall talent management process. Okay, this is the overall talent management process. Okay, so it starts off with a workforce planning. That means at the beginning, typically towards the end of a year, senior management come together and they start assimilating how many people do they need based on the next year's plans. They will factor in things like attrition. Attrition means the rate at which people quit the company, right? It can be both desired and undesired. So they look at attrition rates, typical attrition rates in service companies like TCS, Infosys, CTS is about 25%. That means 25% of people will quit the company and move in the year. Whereas in private companies, it will be typically in the range of 6 to 10%. Okay, so workforce planning happens at the end, towards the end of the year, planning towards the next year. Now, as per the plan, recruitment happens. Um, so some of these are facilitated by HR, or most of these steps are facilitated by HR. It is the human resource department. But the actual inputs, actual decisions in all the cases are done by the engineering managers. So there are separate divisions of labor. One is human resource department, which is actually a facilitation department. They do not take decisions. They facilitate decision making from engineering team. So engineering managers take most of the decisions. For example, the business plan is worked out by the engineering department and they give the inputs. HR has all the records, and then finally, based on mutual discussion, they arrive at how many numbers to hire. So these numbers to hire could be lateral placements. That means people with experience being hired into the company, or it could be freshers, people who the company decides to hire fresh. So they
Sir,
come up
actually,
with some. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, sir. PPT
Hmm.
is not visible, sir.
Oh, is it
I think
so?
you're not
Oh,
shared your screen, sir.
okay. Let me try that again. I haven't shared. Now you should be able to see. Now are you seeing?
Not yet, sir. Not yet, sir.
No, sir.
Let's see. Let's see. It'll come. It'll come.
Sir, it will take some time, sir.
Let me know once it comes up. On
Sure,
my
sir.
screen, it's saying come, sharing.
Not yet shared, sir. It is not yet. No, we can't see that, sir.
Okay, I will once again share. Let me see. No worries.
Yeah, now
How
it's
are you able?
visible.
Now it's
Now it's
visible?
yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Please make it full screen, sir.
Yes, sir, visible.
Yeah, I will make it. Just give me a second.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir, we can see.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is the talent management process. Uh, so there is workforce planning, like I mentioned. That's the first step. The second step is recruitment, where there are lots of steps that happen during recruitment. Um, when the after the workforce plan is done, let's say you have to hire lateral hires. So the channel through which people are hired is discussed. What channel should we use? Should we use a Naukri, or should we use LinkedIn, or should we use employee referrals? What should be our plan? All this is discussed. And then people are recruited through the complete interviewing process. That itself is a huge activity. If it's a fresher hire, so they will decide which colleges they need to visit. Okay, which once again, these are decisions that by the engineering managers. It's human resource department will give a list of colleges. Engineering managers decide which college they need to visit. Okay, so after the recruitment process is done, offer letters go out to prospective employees. Now, once they decide to take up the offer, these people report into the company. The people are then given initial training. They are given laptops or desktops, provided a space in the company, and all these things. Once they are made completely available to the company, that this process is called onboarding. From the offer letter to the time at which the employee is fully functional at work, that process is called onboarding. Okay. So once the employees are onboarded, they get into the performance management system, wherein I will explain what the performance management system is. So they will go through performance management, and to support them, they have training and performance support. Okay? Training and performance support happens. There is something called succession planning, which means if you are working in some critical area, or if you are a manager or a leader or an architect, the company decides to have 2 or 3 people as backup. Okay, this process of having backup is called succession planning, where this manager moves who is going to be the next manager. So that's a decision made. Okay, all these are a part of performance management system. So succession planning is also attached to performance management. Then you have compensation and benefits. How much of salary to be given to an employee? What is the hike that needs to be provided? Hello, we are getting some noise in the system. Somebody needs to go on mute, I guess. There's noise in the system. Yeah, now it's gone. Then you have the gap analysis done. As far as critical skills goes, this gap analysis is typically done against next year's plans. Let's say, example, a company wants to take up Bharat Stage 6 engines. So Bharat Stage 6 engines will require some new technologies. Is there enough of people to handle this kind of new technology that's going to be used from next year onwards? That is called critical skills gap analysis. Okay? That kind of a gap analysis is also done, which goes into the workforce plan. So this is the typical talent management process. Like I said, all of them actually belong to human resources department, chartered under human resource department, but decisions are made by engineering managers. So very different roles and responsibility. What is performance management? I'm going to run you through the performance management process itself now. So the performance management steps start once the employee is available. So once the employee is available at the beginning of the year, the manager thinks about what are the objectives of this particular team. Okay? From the company objectives, I will walk you through these steps as well later on in the slides. So typically it starts with the organization objectives. From the organizational objectives, the team objectives are derived. From the team objectives, individual objectives are derived. So each person will do what, when, and where. It is discussed. So goals are set for each employee based on organizational objectives. The reason is each employee should understand how his performance is going to impact the organization's performance. And everybody's actions need to lead to organizational performance. That's the reason why objectives, individual objectives are derived from organizational objectives. A really good people manager will do a very good job. This requires a lot of experience. So lots of managers are trained on this. I take up consultancy work with various companies working with managers so that we help managers understand company objectives and derive individual objectives. So it's not very easy to become a people manager. It requires skill as well as some training and coaching. So I provide lots of coaching for managers, and I see that this is a regular problem area for most managers. From an academic standpoint, okay, since most of you are in academics, from an academic standpoint, the college might decide we are going to go for NBA accreditation this year. Okay, for NBA accreditation, your department, are you going for NBA accreditation? Okay, if your department is going for NBA accreditation, the HOD will divide this work and he will give it to specific individuals. Oh, individual A will take on section A of NBA, section 1 of NBA. Individual B will take section 2 of NBA, like this. So his goals will be, okay, at the end of the year, you should have provided the requisite data and ensured that in the NBA audit that happens smoothly, right? That's how organizational goals are derived as individual goals from in an academic institution. Now, you provide, so once the employee's goals are fixed, the employee might say, hey, I do not know this. Let's say, particularly in the field of IT, this happens a lot. In the field of computer science, things go very fast. When things go very fast, the employee might be willing, but he might not know a particular topic. So this is discussed and this employee is sent for training so that he is very well equipped. The manager's responsibility is to ensure that the employees are properly equipped to handle the responsibilities that they have been provided. Okay, so ensure that the how is aligned to organizational values. Say, for example, people can say, you have to complete this work. So for completing this work, this particular person has to do it by himself. He cannot give the subcontractor work to another person, right? That is against the organizational values. So that is where the ensuring of how is aligned to organizational values. If your organization believes you cannot pay a bribe, you can obviously, the how part of it, how to achieve these objectives will always include, you should not pay a bribe, right? So that's what I mean by aligned to organizational values. The employee is provided with enough of resources and is provided feedback. Continuously, the employee is provided feedback. Is he going on the right track? Is he not going on the right track? Does he need to do something else? Everything is done. So once the feedback is provided, you are also expected to provide rewards for achieving specific milestones. And you adjust the goals. Sometimes what happens is the goal that is set, the employee is able to achieve it very easily. In such a case, you will have to raise the bar. Typically, it's called raising the bar. So you raise the bar and say, hey, that's good, but you also have to achieve this. You also have to achieve this. So like that. So the bar is set, and then the employees achieve these goals. So this is typically what happens in performance management. Now let me move on. Let me move on to the cycle. How does it actually happen? Let's say we are in a January to December cycle. If it's a January to December cycle, 1st of January, objective setting should have already happened. So objective setting would have happened. The employee clearly knows what he needs to achieve. Once again, this happens through discussions. Typically in companies, in the month of December itself, the employee and the manager sit together and they discuss what this employee needs to achieve. Or if let's say the company is working on an April to March cycle. If they're working on an April to March cycle, in January, February, the manager and the employee sit and start planning towards the next year. Okay. So that is why it is very important for the manager to put enough of effort into each employee. And this is where the span of control for people who teach this topic, there's a typical word that is used, a span of control. The span of control becomes very important. If a manager has about, let's say, anywhere between 6 to 10 reportees, there are 6 to 10 people reporting into this manager, the manager can afford to spend some amount of time with each of his employees. Now that makes a lot of sense. But as the number of people directly reporting into a manager crosses 15, this is once again based on experience and statistics that I'm giving you in these numbers. If the number of people reporting into a manager crosses 15, there is no way a manager can keep a track of what is happening with all his employees. He then just becomes an account manager. He does not become a people manager. Okay, there are different kinds of managers for people the people on this call. The different kinds of managers are people managers who manage people. There are project managers who manage projects. There are account managers who manage accounts. So these are 3 different kinds of managers. So the point of discussion today is all about people managers. It is very confusing, this term called people managers, because companies like product companies like HP, Intel, you will find managers having 8 to 10 reportees or maximum 12 reportees. But if you go to service companies like TCS or Infosys or other companies, you will find 300 people reporting into one manager. Now that manager is not a people manager. That manager is an account manager. He might be called a people manager, but he's not a people manager. There is no way a person can even remember 300 names, forget getting involved with 300 people. So those are account managers. People manager can handle at best 10 to 12 people, 6 at a minimum, 15 at a maximum. Okay? That's the role of a typical role of a people manager. A people manager starts off with setting objectives for all his employees in the beginning of the performance management cycle. In the diagram that I have shown on the screen, this is a January to December cycle. So 1st of January, the document is ready. Everything is documented. So the document is ready, which is written by the employee and agreed to and approved by the manager. So that's how it works. The manager and the employee discuss. The employee writes down his document. The employee wants this document, and this goes on throughout the life cycle. Okay. So the employee writes this document saying that this is what I'm going to achieve in this year. As per the organizational objective, this is what I'm going to achieve. The manager has to agree to this, right? Once again, if you are a fresh graduate, the expectation of the manager from you is less. But if you are a senior member, then the expectation of the manager will be a lot higher. So you cannot say, I am going to do simple tasks based on the salary that you draw, based on the grade in which you are there, based on the years of experience that you have. Your response, whatever you want to achieve, should map to whatever track record that you have, should map to whatever grade that you are in. So all these things are mapped. So from an academic cycle, let me give you an example. And let's say a teacher of maybe 2 or 3 years of experience might be given a target of, let's say, hey, you will teach 2 theory subjects every semester. You will teach 6 labs every semester. And you will get a score of 90% and above based on student feedback, right? And you will also assist Professor so and so in getting the NBA documents ready. So this kind of agreement happens between the employee and the manager at the beginning of the year. Excuse me. Now, this is agreed to. Frequently, the manager and the employee meet. Good companies, it happens at least once a month or maybe once a quarter in some. The employee and the manager meet to discuss what was agreed to at the beginning of the year and what has the employee managed to achieve. Does he require help? Does he or she require help? Because the employee might have agreed, okay, I can do this. When they actually start working, they will discover that they're not properly equipped to handle this. So the manager might need to step in and provide the required support. The objective of the manager is to help the employee succeed. It is not to find faults, but it is for the employee to succeed in his work. So over the entire year, there is a review. This typically is called year-round performance management, YRPM. It is not covered in most textbooks, but YRPM is a feature of many companies. YRPM stands for year-round performance management. So performance management should not be just restricted to one meeting at the beginning of the year, one meeting at the end of the year. That is not performance management. Performance management happens all through the year with active engagement by both the manager and the employee, right? So lots of things get discussed during this period. I've had people discuss personal issues also. I'll give you one more example. So I had this lady, very efficient girl, very efficient girl, who I believed will go places. Okay, so we were having this discussion. She is, and she had gotten married. She had gotten married, and the husband used to work in Accenture. Okay, for people who are not familiar, the salary differential between Accenture and ₹1,000 in Accenture, the same person would be earning about 4,000 in Intel salary. So she had married somebody in Accenture. Okay, so now the problem comes because Accenture is a service company. So people are posted to various countries. When people are posted to various countries, obviously the wife would also like to travel with the husband. Now this girl is highly capable, but her duties were limited to India. Now if she goes where her husband goes, let's say in Sweden or someplace, she'll be useless. She will have to quit and go, right? As a manager, it is my problem if she quits and goes once I've given her lots of responsibilities. So I need to discuss with her as to what she's going to do in this situation. Once again, this discussion has to be handled with lots of tact, lots of feelings, empathy, because you are trespassing. If you go a little bit further, you are trespassing on private information, right? But you should, at the same time, you are responsible for the company. So you should balance this. It's very important for you to balance this. And while setting objectives, you have to put in effort. It's not easy. You have to understand each employee, understand what they're going through, and then set this object. Okay? Not at all an easy process. I will once again discuss a little bit more about this part later on. Performance appraisal. So we have set the objectives. If you go back, we have set the objectives now. After objectives, you go and do the aligning the objectives, right? So when you align objectives, you become comfortable articulating the organization's vision and strategic direction. I'm assuming that all of you understand what's vision and what is strategy. These are two different terms, often confused. So the company's vision and the company's strategy to achieve this vision, both are very well understood by the manager. He or she understands how it is to work in this kind of an organization. Um, and they should be in a position sensitive enough for them to understand each individual and each individual's needs and align those individual needs to organizational needs. Because people are interested to pursue. Let's say, for example, I had one person who wanted to be a people manager. Okay, he wanted to be a people manager. Now I have to align his aims to what the company needs. The company does not need a people manager, but this guy wants to be a people manager. So how does a manager handle it in this situation? So what does is he provides this particular person opportunities to lead some initiatives. He will pick an initiative and ask this person to lead this initiative. During the process of leading this initiative, the guy learns how to manage people, how to report, how to handle inefficiencies, everything these people. Okay, so all these kinds of things are done. So individual objectives are mapped to organizational objectives and then done that. Okay, so that's how it is done. Very tricky. It requires lots of tact. That's why you will find that lots of companies these days are hiring coaches. People like me go sit with young managers, spend time with them so that they understand how to align individual objectives to company objectives. Okay? So this is what you mean by objective setting. Very tricky, guys. Very, very tricky. You have to put in lots of effort. You need to have lots of experience and you should genuinely like people. Only people-oriented people can be good managers. I have seen, once again, this is based on my experience. What I've seen is people in the age group of 27, 28, guys particularly, because of social pressures, they're getting married now. If they're getting married, they don't want themselves to be called software engineers or some senior engineer. They want to be called managers. So they go and harass HR saying that you give me a manager posting, I have 7 years of experience, you have to call me manager. So if the guy is so important to the organization, they will make him a manager. But he has no people management capability. He is just asking to be a manager and the company is going down and making him a manager. That's a very bad activity. It's happening a lot in India these days. In India, once again, I'll connect this to culture. The Indian culture is such that if you are doing the same job over and over again for 3 years or more, you are considered irrelevant, right? You are no longer relevant. People have to get promoted every 3 years, every 4 years. They have to change what they are doing every 3 years, 4 years. In other countries, it doesn't happen like that. For 30 years, they keep doing the same job. They're happy getting the same salary or maybe small hikes in the salary. They're okay. But they are doing the same job. But in India, if you're doing the same job over many years, people consider you as irrelevant or person with very low capabilities. So that's how society views you. So because of that, there's a lot of discomfort that happens in people management area, particularly in India. Okay, now as we move along, when you write objectives, I'm giving you an example here. The overall objective of the company is to reduce waste. Okay, the company decides improvements. So as a group, you decide implement improvement. Remember, all these are SMART. SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, objective has to follow the SMART guidelines. Once again, SMART means specific, means it should be very clearly stated. It cannot say things like faster, slower, lesser weight, more weight. You cannot talk like this. You should be very specific. Measurable. So whatever you say should be capable of being measured. At the end of the year, you can't say, oh, I believe that you did not do that. The employee says, I believe I did that. No, such a kind of discussion should not happen at the end of the year. So measurements should be very clearly drawn up. Not set unattainable goals. To the organization and very clearly there's a deadline involved. Okay, a deadline involved. So time bound is there. So the objective is to reduce waste, but the way in which the objective is written is implement improvements to reduce material waste by 5% by the end of this quarter. Right? So very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant time bound. So if you reduce it to a manager, provide ongoing constructive feedback and coaching and implement developing action for each associate. Now let's get down to an individual person. Individual person, identify and deliver changes to improve forecast accuracy by 10% by the end of the year. So this comes down to a specific person in an innovation challenge, right? So this is how it's done. Okay. So these are what meant by SMART objectives. Okay. So I gave you an example in an academic situation also. And in most companies, this is how it's done. Right? From the organizational objectives, they derive individual objectives. And all these objectives are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Only when this is the case, then only it's called an objective. If you don't write a good objective statement, at the end of the year, you are definitely going to face a very quarrelsome situation. And it will go open door. Open door means the employee complains to HR. That's called as an open door. So it will go open door and it will be lots of problems. So there are many performance appraisal methods. Okay? So what we have done so far is we have written down the objectives for the company, for the person. After writing down the objective for the person, you are appraising this person all through the year. So this is called performance appraisal. Appraisal means you are measuring this person based on whatever he or she said he will do for the entire year against benchmarks that the individual himself has set. Right? It is all governed by the employee only. So the employee is responsible for whatever he or she says is going to achieve in this year. Let me spend a little bit more time in this particular stuff. Okay, objective setting. In the objective setting, what happens is, let's say a person is working in grade 3 now. Let's say the entire organization is divided on different grades. These grades decide salary and responsibility levels. So at grade 3, your responsibility levels should be A, B, C, D, and E, and your salary levels are this. So if this employee has to get promoted next year to grade 4, then his objectives should map to grade 4. Right? It should not map to grade 3. It should map to the next level. You should say, I want a promotion and this is what I'm going to do. All these are based on the next level. And if the manager agrees, then those become the objectives. And the employee works towards these objectives all through the year. So it's never the same. The bar is raised every year and sometimes in between the, right? So the bar keeps on raising. I'll come back to the appraisal now. There are many methods for appraisal, guys. There is ranking, rating, peer rating. If you go and look into textbooks, you will find 3 different classifications, about 25 different methods of performance appraisal. I have been a part of many performance appraisals. I will give you some real bad example of how performance appraisals are done. In one company that I used to work for, the CEO of the company called all of us managers into one room and then said, okay, I have a new project. Who are all the people that I'm going to give this project to you? That means he's giving the project to all the managers. So I want you to select a team. So everybody started selecting team members. So he said, okay, these are all common names. Since all these are common names, I will give salary hikes according to your wish list. If you have rated employee A as the first person on your team, that person will get the maximum salary hike. The person that nobody has selected in any of the teams does not get any salary. So this is the way in which they did performance appraisal in this particular company. Very bad method because there are different kinds of functions. There are functions, let's say, for example, in software industry, there are developers, there are testers, there are quality personnel, there are finance, there's HR, and all these people. Who would want an HR person on your team? Or why would you want to have a finance person on your team? They will never get selected. That means since they are not on any team, they should not get any hike. It is completely wrong, right? So there are times where such kind of dumb things are done. Or let's take, for example, the government way. Government way, there's no question asked. Every year you are supposed to get increments. As long as you bow down before your manager or head, you keep on getting those increments. If the manager or head decides to stop those increments, he will have to have enough of justification to handle that in court. Okay, so government establishments are a law unto themselves. But typically in good companies, they follow very good appraisal systems. And one of the most popular appraisal systems in today's industry is something called as a 360-degree performance appraisal. Okay? This is what happens, 360-degree performance appraisal. So performance appraisal happens at different levels. Okay? Performance appraisal happens, the manager keeps talking to the employee about his performance every month, twice or thrice every quarter, like this. But his inputs come from 360 degrees. That means if there's an employee, the manager asks the peers of this employee, that means people in the same pay grade, team members, the employees, the subordinates of this employee. If this employee talks to suppliers, all the suppliers. If the employee talks to customers, all the customers. Line managers, other managers who work with this employee, direct reports, other team members. So all these people are discussed. At Intel, since it was a global company, we had specific rules. We would get geo feedback, cross geo feedback. That means this person is interacting with somebody in the US, would mandatorily get inputs from that particular employee, right, from the US, as to how this employee is faring, right? So cross geo feedback was something mandatory. And the manager collects all these different feedbacks, consolidates that, because not all people are equally mature. There are some very immature people who give some dumb comments. So the manager has to use his discretion to find out which is real, which is not real. He or she should not consider everybody's comments blindly. There should be some search done. Manager should be careful about selecting the people for getting feedback from. And then based on that, the feedback is consolidated. Okay, I'll give you some examples of how 360-degree feedback works. Okay, I had a manager. This guy was I was his mentor, and he kept on asking me, can I become a people manager? In my organization, there was a people manager opening that had happened. So I went through the interview process. This guy did well. So I got him in as the manager. Right? He had a team of about 8 people. First time manager, so I had given him a relatively lightweight team, 8 people under this particular guy. His name was Sachin something else, so I'll just say Sachin. Sachin was the manager. And in his team, there were many people. There were some stars also in his team. Okay, there were some real stars in the team. This guy, first-time manager. So in his spirit of excitement, what he has done is, he has gone ahead and spoken to customers. We were dealing with multiple customers, and this guy has gone ahead and spoken to customers, and he said, my team is excellent, and whenever my team reacts with you, interacts with you, I need feedback. But hey, in an email, put me as BCC. I don't want my team members to know that you are talking to me. I am also a part of this message, so you keep me as BCC. For people who are not familiar with email language, I will explain this. Email language typically says, if you send it to somebody, that means you are expecting a reply back from this particular person. To means somebody has to do that. If it is just an FYI, for your information kind of email, you put the receiver as a CC, carbon copy, a CC. So a person who is in the CC is not supposed to reply back. Person in the CC is just supposed to note this information down. Okay? And then there's something called as BCC, blind carbon copy. You should never use this blind carbon copy. You do BCC only to send out invitations. What happens when you send out wedding invitations? You have your wedding and you want to invite people. You don't want everybody to know who you are inviting. So you put everybody's name in BCC. So nobody will see who this mail has actually gone to. Everybody will receive their mail, but they will not be in a position to know who else you have invited, right? That is when you use BCC, blind carbon copy. But in an organizational setting, if you are in a BCC, that means you do not trust the team. So what Sachin had done was, he had connected with customers and said, whenever you interact with my team members, so if they interact with Sachin's team members, they are supposed to BCC Sachin. If he had said CC Sachin, it wouldn't have been a problem. He said BCC. So the team members suddenly realized that this guy is on BCC. Once they realized that this guy is on BCC, they came back and complained, saying that Sachin does not trust us. So we do not want to work for Sachin. We don't want Sachin as a manager. So this was a very strong feedback provided by the team members. And all these guys are very good people. So I don't want to lose them. At the same time, I want Sachin to succeed. So what do? I cannot say, hey, Sachin, your team members are complaining because you put them on BCC. I cannot say that. So I called Sachin. During our next meeting, I put an arm around Sachin and say, Sachin, look, you seem to have trust issues in your team. Your team members are complaining of a lack of trust. So please ensure that you correct it. He said, why, what happened? I said, no. It's for you to figure out as a manager why trust issues are happening. You figure out and you correct it. This was in the first quarter of the year. So after about 4 or 5 months, 2 people came to me and said, Sudhir, either you change Sachin or we are going to quit. So I once again had this conversation with the 2 people and said, since they respected me a lot, they agreed to hold on or whatever for another 3 months. So I go to Sachin and say, Sachin, your problems are becoming more. So can you please take care of this? Can you please take care of this? So Sachin once again does not agree, because first-time managers think that they are God's gift to management. Just like students come in first year of engineering, they come thinking that they are God's gift to engineering. They are the sharpest brains, right? That's what students assume. So that's how the first-time managers also happen. When people are become managers for the first time, they think they are the world's best managers. They never open themselves out in front of a mirror. They need to look into a mirror and find out what their problems are, but they don't look into the mirror at all. So I had to explain it to him. Once again, he did not correct himself. The problems still remained. Since the problems remained, at the end of the year, I had to provide him with an appraisal, right? So why I gave you this, I will talk about Sachin later on. When I come to that part, I will talk about Sachin and his problems. But in a 360-degree feedback, this is what we do. We collect a feedback from everybody associated with an individual, right? Subordinates, peers, team members, direct reportees, customers, and the manager has to consolidate all this feedback, understand what is correct, what is not correct, what is real, what is not real, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and provide this feedback to the employee. Okay, this is what 360-degree feedback appraisal method is. So appraisal is done at the end of the year. If all of you must have seen a normal curve, right? Bell curve. Bell curve is one of the most hated things in the world. Okay, if at all you hate something in mathematics, if you take a poll, you will find most people hating bell curve. Bell curve is used by managers a lot. So maybe I will explain this. So HR people will say, we'll put a policy in place. Human resource department will put a policy in place for engineering managers. Engineering managers, look, in your team, you should find at least 15% non-performers. At least 15% non-performers. And you can find up to 15% top performers. We would typically suggest 5% top performers and 20% non-performers. The rest of them, you can make it as successful. What is the significance of this? Let me explain. Significance of this is, if the company decides to give a hike of 5%, let the company decides to give a hike of 5% salary hike. So the average performers get 5%. Okay? The average performers get 5%. The poor performers get no hike, zero hike. Whereas the high performers will get 3x the hike. That means if 5 is the percentage provided to average performers, 15% hike is provided to high performers, 3x the hike. So this is how hikes are provided. So that is the relevance of this normal curve. Okay. Now, managers, they will find, based on the objectives that they set, everything, they'll find a lot of people in the high performance zone. They really do not find too many people in the poor performance. Very rarely do you find 1 or 2 people in the poor performance zone, but generally you will find more people doing very well in their jobs. So the job of a manager becomes very tricky in these cases, because HR will have a policy in place and they stick to it. They say that you can only give 15% of people as high performers, out of which you can only promote this number of people. The promotions are also restricted. The high performance hikes are also restricted. So you have to work within this. So sometimes you will have a very ugly conversation with your employees. This guy would have done brilliantly, but somebody else also would have done brilliantly. Somebody else would have done brilliantly, and its impact on company is a lot greater than this guy. When you actually have this discussion with your employee, and you have to explain it to him that you are an average performer, despite him being a good performer, a big challenge. So this is where coaching for managers is very important. Okay, poor performers to communicate to poor performers is also very tricky. As we go along in the slides, I will talk about poor performers. For example, I'll just give an example now. The same example that I gave you last time, Sachin. So Sachin, I had to rate Sachin as a poor performer. As a manager, he was a poor performer because his team did not agree with him, his customers did not agree with him, his suppliers did not agree with him, his line managers were not very happy with him. So I had to treat Sachin as a poor performer. So I call him into a meeting at the end of the year and say, Sachin, I have done your review, and in the nicest possible way, I tried to explain it to him, saying that is a poor performer. What happens with a poor performer is they are given a personal improvement plan, PIP it's called. In most companies it is called PIP, personal improvement plan. In 3 months, they have to improve their performance. In 3 months, if they do not improve their performance, they are kicked out of the company. For 1 year, they do not get any hike, that is for sure. But in 3 months, if they do not improve their performance, they are out. So they are given a PIP. So I had to give Sachin a PIP, saying that In 3 months, you have to improve. This guy broke down completely. He fell at my feet and started crying profusely and say, I have two children, wife, I've just bought a car, I'm supposed to pay EMI on my house. How can you treat me like this? You are my mentor. You are the one who got me this job. Despite that, you're treating me like a poor performer, blah, 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 blah. He kept on crying. So I had to explain it to him that, hey, you are not cut out to be a manager. No, I want to be a manager only. Then life to him. So it is very tough being a manager and this and promotions. Giving performance feedback, like I said, it's very, very tricky. Annual feedback is to keep intermediate feedback. So how to the prospect of giving, receiving, or eliciting feedback. So let me give you an example, guys. In the academic circles. So in the year, I just came back from Intel into this particular college, and the principal was really progressive. He said, let's have a performance management system for the entire college. So I go ahead and engineer, formulate a complete performance appraisal plan. I do all the performance appraisal. I provide them measurements. I provide them what are the dimensions of doing this. Everything, the entire performance management system is in place. So the HOD is supposed to give performance feedback to students, to so there's one HOD who, staff member, hey, look, it seems you're not a good teacher. Students are all teacher. This guy has teacher has about 20 years of experience. The HOD and this teacher are not separated by more than 5 years. They're pretty. So if HOD calls and talks like there, he came out and started, and I say, why are you crying? Then he said, some stupid proposal, and because of that, my HOD. That's what happens if you might system in place, performance management system in place. If this feedback properly to your employee, giving feedback is also dangerous. Very stimulating on a right, they have been destroyed after receiving. Emotional quotients are quite low. There are some people with they cannot take negative feedback at all. I know of lots of people who cannot take negative feedback. You tell them, hey, this, it might be asked, did you like the cooking that I made today? And you say, add little bit more of chili powder. And say, how dare you comment on whatever I see? Just because I put in so much of effort in preparing this dish. Household as well. Giving feedback is an art, guys. Giving feedback and receiving feedback. You have to practice. You have to. In real life as well, this is a major challenge. All skills, it takes practice to build your confidence and improve. Nobody is born at right. We will all make a better and better. Your value in the organization goes up. For example, the feedback you give to your students come to you and you provide them feedback, right? The way in which you give feedback is what determines how the student is going to feel towards you. I have failed students, guys. I have failed students and I have provided them feedback. They went back with the feedback. They were sad without doubt because they have failed. But they went back in a more positive way because they understood what went wrong with them and how they need to improve. There is no doubting that they're sad because I failed them. But doesn't mean that they're angry towards me. They're angry about their own performance. That's the way that you need to communicate. It comes with experience. It comes with you learning, you opening yourself out, right? So this is a true test as to how you communicate bad information. If you communicating good information is very easy, but you communicating bad information requires lot of skill and tact. The importance of feedback, it increases motivation. Of course, it increases motivation. Good feedback increases motivation, enhances performance. If somebody is not working properly, if you tell them how to work properly, it will obviously enhance performance. Elevates engagement. That means the team bonding will increase because people understand that the manager is always involved with them, right? So it elevates engagement and it's a tool for career development. Feedback is not criticism. It is a supportive act intended to deal with underperformance in a constructive way. Right? The example of the HOD calling a teacher and saying, "Hey, your teachers do not like your teaching. You're a bad teacher." Now, that's a bad way of presenting it. Right? If only the HOD had used tact, spoken nicely, started off in a positive way, done all the right things, he could have communicated it much, much better. Yeah. You can actually do a role play kind of stuff with this. Unfortunately, time limits us, so I have to move along. Tools for road. The most important thing in any performance management system is you have to have very clear expectations. You have to understand what you and others control, influence, or you simply have to live with it because you don't control, can't influence. The continuum for giving and eliciting feedback. And there's a model, situation behavior impact model. I will explain this model also to you. Expectations are critical. So you have to take time to set expectations because that is the key to the entire performance management system. You setting the proper expectations. It has to follow the SMART objectives: specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound. You have to do a checklist and say, "Oh, I've covered all these boxes." So the objective is very clear. So this is what you mean by expectations. There are certain things that you are in control. There are certain things you can influence. There are certain things you have no influence over whatsoever. Right? Particularly if it's external to the organization, you have no control over such things. But there are certain things that you can definitely control. The employee can control. The manager can influence to ensure that the employee can do this part also. So that is section 2. But there are certain things that both manager and the employee have no control over. So that should be clearly marked out. Continuum for giving eliciting feedback. When you're providing feedback or when you're asking for feedback, these are the things that you typically note for. What should you start? What should you do? What should you do more of? What are the things that are really working? What things are really working, you should do more of. Things that you want to change. What are the things that you want to change and what is the change? Right? There are certain things you are doing wrong and you have to do less of, right? Do less of. What do you want me to stop completely, right? So all these things you have to mention when you are giving feedback or you are collecting feedback. You should ask specifically for employees. Okay, on the random example, guys. I will tell you what changed me as an individual, right? I joined teaching in 1990, 89, 90, I joined teaching. I was one of those guys who was very good at studies, so studies was very easy. I assume studies are easy to all students. And I was very casual because teaching was not my main profession. I was into something else at that point in time, and teaching was a secondary profession for me. So I used to go into a class unprepared. So after one class, particular class, I was walking down the steps. This happened in 1990. I'm really thankful to God that this thing happened to me. There's this guy, I still remember his name, Sharan, wearing an yellow color turtleneck t-shirt. He came along with me along the stairs. I was very young at that point in time. I was 22. And this guy comes around and tells me, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, please go ahead. He told me, look, you are a smart guy and you have all the abilities to teach. But do you think you are doing an honest job? You do not prepare and come into our class. Do you think you are doing an honest job? Do you think you are doing a job worthy of 60 minutes to a class? Do you think you are doing worthy of the salary that you are getting? The salary that I was getting was pitiful, very, very small. At that point in time, I was getting a salary of 1,890 rupees, less than 2,000 rupees. But this was in 8990, by the way. But I felt so sad. I did not react to that student. I just said, thank you so much. And introspected. Hey, what is this guy talking about? I felt very bad for about 3 days. Then I said, okay, what is it that I need to do? If this guy is telling the truth, then I must be doing something wrong. So I went through this entire continuum and said, hey, this is what I'll do. I came with a plan, and from then on, I changed completely. In fact, from that point onwards, whatever I do in life, I put in the entire effort, I test, I try it out on many people before I make up anything, right? But that incident, that feedback changed me for good. And criticism is always good. Critical feedback is always good. You open yourself out to it, you will be really good at it. Teachers, academicians generally are, how shall I say, I guess it's something to do with the job itself. We have huge egos. And when somebody gives us a negative feedback, it hurts us a lot, right? Unless we open ourselves out and unless there's a strong drive to do better, you're never going to be a great teacher. So this is very important from a teacher's perspective. Okay, coming back to the topic, situation, behavior, impact model. So once again, you have to be very specific here. You have to capture the situation. What exactly is that? When you give feedback, you have to say, in this particular situation, in this meeting, what did you do wrong? And what is the impact of you doing this wrong? I'll give you an example right in today's morning. Today morning, I had set up a meeting between some staff members and a company. They wanted us to help them out with a product. And I had gotten a few staff members who were really interested in developing this product. So I was chairing this meeting wherein I got these teachers to introduce themselves to this company. The company executive was a pretty senior man, and these staff members, they were supposed to introduce. So the person went like this: myself, yes, XYZ, work in this thing. I have done BB, I have done COBOL, I have done SQL. I have done projects. Okay, this was the way he or she introduced. So after the meeting was over, I said, can I talk to you? And said, yes. So I spoke with the person and said, look, the way in which you introduce yourself actually sets the tone. So you are supposed to introduce, I am so-and-so. You should say, myself so-and-so is not a very nice way of it. I am so-and-so. Prior to working for this particular college, I was working as a software engineer in this particular company. My responsibilities included drafting requirements, working with customers, drafting requirements, coming up with a design, and developing the product. I also was responsible for maintenance of this product. Like this, I have done 2 such products over span of 2 years. So this is the way that you need to introduce. So did you understand the entire feedback loop? You have to explain the situation. You have to explain the behavior, why you think that behavior was not appropriate, and you have to explain the impact of this bad behavior or wrong behavior, right? So once you do that, people will understand you better and they will start trying to change. So this is called situation behavior impact model. Giving effective feedback, it has to be timely. You cannot give a feedback after a month or so. People will not remember. So feedback needs to be given instantaneously, not directly in front of your customer, but after the meeting is over, take the person to the side and then provide that feedback. Right? There's always a big statement. Appreciate, praise in public, chide in private. That means when you appreciate people, you do it publicly. But when you want to scold a person, you have to do it privately. Right? That's what it means. So timely is so important, guys. So when you provide feedback, it has to be timely. It has to be very clear. You cannot say, can you do it faster? That has no meaning. So you have to specifically say, what is it that you want them to do? It has to be non-judgmental, right? And it has to be actionable. That's what feedback is. I don't like you. Is that feedback? Not actionable. So it's not non-judgmental. So that's not a feedback. Giving effective feedback, creating and delivering a specific message based on observed performance is key to effective feedback, right? So it's very tricky. It requires practice. So general rule of the thumb, I had about 11 employees in my last job. These 11 employees were all around the world. I had 7 of them from India, 2 of them from US, 1 from Israel and 1 from Malaysia. So 11 people, 11 people. And I used to spend at least 3 hours per employee going, rehearsing what I'm going to talk to that employee. 3 hours per employee. Okay. I had to rehearse, figure out. I used to rehearse in front of a mirror. I used to use my wife and children as a receiving end to find out how they react. Right? You have to spend so much of effort rehearsing, figuring out how this response is going to be felt by the employee. Then you go ahead and then talk about feedback to this particular employee. Then it works well, guys. That much amount of involvement, that much amount of investment is required when you provide feedback. It's not like taking a slip of paper and reading it out in front of the employee. The employee will never agree with you. They will contest every word that you have. They contest every word. They will contest your body language. They will contest the intonation, pitch. They will contest everything, right? And then they will go to HR and complain you are harassing them. Okay, so you have to put so much of effort in giving effective feedback. The dozen do's. There are certain do's and don'ts. Okay. Once again, these are very generic. Some of them might not be applicable to certain situations. So be specific when describing the situation. You have to be specific. You have to be specific when describing the behavior. In what situation, what behavior caused this problem? Look, it is never the problem of the individual. It is a problem of the individual's behavior in a particular situation. Please understand that. When you give feedback, it is not a feedback for the person. It is a feedback against a specific action of that individual in a specific situation. So you have to quote the situation, you have to quote the action, then only the feedback is effective. Acknowledge the impact on you. What impact did it have? Judge the behavior, pay attention to body language. Right? You have to be very careful about taking care of body language. Okay, there was this one guy, I still remember. This guy, his name was Saad, and he was given a task. He was given a task in a large group activity. This was a critical project, a very critical project, which runs for 65 hours, 65 continuous hours. In small projects, each task is very important because there is no time to recover at all. The entire project has to be done in 65 hours. It's very critical. So there is no space anytime. So any task there, people have to rehearse, give results, and get an approval before they are given, before they actually deliver this task. So the 65-hour project, we had lots and lots of exercises happening before that. So this Saad guy had failed continuously. His activity was not tested. So we had said, Saad, look, you cannot do this activity. But Intel has this value on risk taking. Intel always appreciates risk taking. So in that 65 hours, our friend Saad goes ahead and tries his untested activity. To all our fortune, it somehow works. So, but the project manager runs back to me and says, look, Saad has done this task, which we had not approved of, but yet he has tried this. They were all scared as to what might happen to the whole project. So after this entire project was completed, I called Saad and Saad, listen, your activity was not approved, but why did you go ahead and do that activity, which was not approved? Said, Sudhir, you always like risk taking. So I took a risk, it worked. But what that guy did not understand was risk taking is something which you do after weighing the consequences. He has not even weighed the consequences. If this project had failed, it would have cost billions of dollars of revenue loss. The company, this guy hasn't realized that at all. He has just gone ahead and taken. He says it's a risk. I took a risk. Risk taking is valued, so I should be appreciated. So then I had to explain what risk taking is and what stupidity is. Right? So you have to really explain to people as to why they're wrong. They will contest. They will always say they were not wrong at all. So you have to very clearly explain to them why a certain activity is wrong. Focus on a single message. You do not mix up messages. Focus on a single message. Be sensitive to the emotional impact of feedback. Lots of times when you give negative feedback, people will cry. I've had girls who cry or guys who cry. Right? Very difficult time to handle. But you are supposed to handle with equanimity, and you should ensure that things never go out of hand. You should not come to fist cups. Right? You have to be very careful. Don'ts, what you should never do while giving feedback. You should never assume. You should never be vague. You cannot, wishy-washy answers should not be provided. You cannot accuse a person. You have to explain the situation. Like I said, you have to explain the situation. You have to explain the behavior. You should not accuse. You are not judging a person. You are judging their actions. Now, pass along vague feedback. There are certain managers who are, like the example that I gave you about the HOD. That this HOD does not want to take ownership of this decision. He says, hey, students are not liking you. You are supposed to be a bad teacher as per them. So you are passing on the blame to somebody who gave you feedback in honest feedback, right? You should not be doing that. You should not pass along feedback. You should internalize that feedback and provide useful, actionable feedback. You should never do psychoanalysis. There's another fault of managers. They think just because they're managers, they're very good at psychology and they do stupid things. There are lots of very funny stories. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I'll jump. Label your feedback in advance. You cannot say, I'm going to give you some bad feedback, right? That should never be done. You should not use but, oh, you are a very nice guy, but this problem. You should not do that. It should be specific feedback that you should provide, okay? These are some do's and don'ts for giving feedback. So I'm just giving you an example here. Your presentation was weak. Now, this is a bad feedback. Okay, it's vague. It is not specific. It is not measurable. It's not actionable. Now, you look at this, the one at the bottom. Your presentations always include a wealth of new ideas. That means you're starting off on a positive note. The person who is receiving this actually starts feeling good, and the blow that you are coming through is couch now. But you don't sound personally excited about the things you are suggesting. This one but is, you cannot escape this. There has to be this particular but. Your presentations always include a wealth of new ideas, but you don't personally sound excited about the things you are suggesting. Your voice is often very soft and monotone, and your rate of speaking can be very slow. Our surveys show that your audience members think that you're bored with your topic, right? And that makes them feel bored too. So this is a much better feedback than the earlier one. Okay. So I hope with this you understand what a feedback system is and what good feedback is. Receiving feedback. When you receive feedback, you have to listen attentively. You need to listen to them. The difference between listening and hearing. What happens when somebody is giving you negative feedback is after the first word, you stop listening. Right? After the first word, you stop listening. That's bad. You have to listen attentively. Repeat only what you heard. You should not make assumptions. So this is what you told me. Is this what you mean by it? So be very clear. Ask for specifics, including what you are doing well. You should never take only negative feedback. Somebody is giving you negative feedback, ask what is it that you find good about me, right? And after the feedback is provided, always thank the person who is giving feedback. Remember, it requires great courage to give feedback to somebody else. Ask if you can check back. So after doing this, can I check back with you? They say yes, that's very good. Okay. So this is about receiving feedback. I've spoken about giving feedback. I've spoken about receiving feedback. Barriers to effective communication. This is standard stuff. Inattention, interrupting, allowing prejudgments, deciding beforehand only, listening for points of disagreements. How can you fight? Feeling defensive, right? So these are some stuff which are actually main barriers when you receive feedback. Okay, once you have gotten the feedback, now what happens? So let's go back to our performance management system. In our performance management system, you set the objectives, you did appraisals, you collected feedback from everybody, you rated them on the normal curve. Now we are providing feedback. Now what happens? If the feedback is good, if the person has done brilliantly, then he or she is promoted. If the person's performance is bad, then they are given a personal improvement plan, PIP. And after 3 months, you inspect how well they have progressed in their task. If they are doing well, then it's okay. If they're not doing well, they are sent out of the company. Right? That's how it works. You might see that there are lots of people being pushed out of companies these days. Because of this COVID situation, they have raised the bar everywhere and they are measuring everybody as per the new bar, which is not fair actually, but they are doing it. So many companies are reporting about 15 to 20% of people who have been fired. Okay. So you will find many mid to senior level people who will come out of companies now because they're all being sent out. So this is what performance management is, guys. Performance management is a very vast topic. I've given it to you in a nutshell. I've just explained it to you from a completely practical standpoint. Okay. This is completely practical. If you go into theory, there are many methods, many methods. Each method we can discuss it at length, but most of those methods are not used in practice. What is used in practice is what I've tried explaining it to you. Okay. I will now stop for questions. Guys, if you have questions either from today's session or from yesterday's session, I'm going to take it from now. Harish, is that okay?
Thank you so much, sir. And I'm informed that there is a big list here. The participants, you would like to interact directly, or should I read out?
Okay, there is one question. There are some questions. Okay, I will start. All right, taking them. Please cite non-judgmental phases in feedback. You should not say, like I said, I do not like this personally. That is something wrong. You should say specific action resulted in this behavior. which has a following impact on the company. That is why I think it is wrong. You should not put in your personal feelings and say, I do not like it. There is no such thing as I do not like it. Right? That's what I mean by non-judgmental. Right? So next question is, feedback has its own impact. So proper feedback has its own impact. Yes, any kind of feedback, positive or negative, has its own impact. So I will ask this question, guys. So supposing you go back, talk to your wife or husband. Try this out today. You give them a positive feedback, and you see the expression on their face. They become so happy. You provide them a negative feedback. Look at the expression on their face, how sad they will be, right? So any feedback has an impact on people, right? Each feedback, if you do a correct feedback, also it has impact on the whole essence of giving feedback is it should have impact on people. But is it the impact that you desire? Now that's the question, right? If it's the same impact that you desire, then you have succeeded in your feedback. But if it has a different impact than what you desire, then the way in which you have given feedback is wrong. Right? So that's what it is. So there's another question. So let me quickly go up. There is no system of providing feedback of seniors in government and education institution. Why is it so? It is all coming in, guys. The new system has feedback, right? Every system has feedback. Government has the schemes. Only thing is, it is not exercised. People think that increments are their due. Okay, they do not think increments have to be earned. The whole idea of increments is the manager judges the subordinate based on objectives and then provides these increments. But unfortunately, people take it for granted. So it's not a question of is it in the framework? It is in the framework. It is how people execute that's changing. It is changing, and soon you will see a positive change coming through. Top to bottom feedback is okay. HOD tells teacher accepts. Is the reverse possible? Yes. There is a possibility. That means in your institution, there should be a feedback system even for the HODs. HODs are also employees, right? They are also given specific objectives. One of the objectives is to keep their team happy, right? So if the performance management system is good, then the teachers need to rate the HOD. Right? That's how it works. 360-degree feedback means that the teachers rate their HOD. Right? That's what good feedback system is. Hey, if there is no good feedback system, that's a different question. But I'm talking about good feedback systems here. Having experience in both academics and industry, what pros and cons are there in both professions? This is a very broad question. Can you drop me a note on this? I can write a mail to you because this is too large an answer. And I think we are running out of time and there are more questions. A very good question, by the way. Very, very good question. Very interesting. I would love to answer that. But let's take it offline because it's very large. What else? Please say it dear participants. What is the difference between performance appraisal and potential appraisal? Oh, potential appraisal is another story, right? Potential appraisal, you actually promote people based on their potential. Okay, so potential appraisal is also something that happens in good companies. So what is done is during the year-round performance management, there is a system where each employee is discussed, and his potential to perform as a manager or as a project manager or as a technical architect, what his potential is marked out, and his potential might come through in 2 years or 3 years time. But then in the rating system, during the performance rating discussion, they will say, okay, you are very close to this, or you need to put in more effort into this, or hey, I don't think you're going to be a technical architect. Why can't you be a project manager or a people manager? So such kind of discussions do happen. That's what potential appraisal and performance. Performance appraisal is how we have performed. Potential appraisal means what you can actually achieve. It's actually sometimes a part of performance appraisal, but typically handled outside. What is the difference between, okay, it can apply to any cadre. Thank you. Then any other question? How do we accept non-judgmental feedback? You should never accept non-judgmental feedback. You should ask them for specific feedback. There is no such thing as non-judgmental feedback. Okay, how do we accept non-judgmental feedback? You accept non-judgmental feedback. So that's how feedback is. If it's judgmental, you should not accept it. What is performance appraisal impact on planning? Performance appraisal impact on planning. Actually, there's, remember, I'm talking about an year-round performance management. In a year-round performance management, the manager already knows who your poor performers are. And during the discussion with HR, he comes up with certain desired attrition. Attrition means who are the people who will move out of the company. So this can be both desired and undesired. People who you actually want them to quit and go out of the company, those are called desired attrition. People who you want to retain the company, quitting and going out of the company is called undesired attrition. So these performance appraisal results go in and become a basis for HR's attrition rates. And based on attrition rates, you hire. So you drive the entire talent management plan based on your attrition numbers. So that's how it's connected. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for listening to me. Anand, you have to drop me a note. I will not remember, so you will have to drop a mail to me. My mail ID is with Harisha. You can collect that. What you have explained, you have many experience in institution. How to make understand the management if they're not willing to follow procedure? Now that's a very, very interesting question. So this was a question that was asked to me by multiple people, right? So there's one person, I'm a coach for many universities also. I go and teach teachers as to how to teach. Teachers have PhDs and everything, but nobody ever teaches a teacher how to teach, right? So there are certain universities which call me to teach their teachers how to teach. And one of those sessions, I explained everything. And after a couple of months, teachers wrote back to me. I was talking to them about ethics and integrity in teachers and stuff like that. So the teacher writes, my HOD is takes the question papers and sells the question papers. So what should I do in such a situation? Right? The HOD is supposed to have collected the question paper and sold the question paper to students. So this teacher is feeling very bad. And this teacher is asking me, what should I do in such a situation? So what should the person do in such a situation? They should quit the company and choose something else, because if it does not meet your ethical standards, you should not be a part of that setup, right? Easier said than done, right? It's easier said. I can say that quit the company, but not many people can afford quitting a company. You will, once again, it will lead to some bad things. I can give you a much broader example as to what kind of a disease this is. In the software industry, once again, I'll pick software industry because it's really wrong there. In software industry, about 70% of the people are not good. They are very mediocre. Okay? Out of the 70%, about 60% of them know that they are mediocre, know that they are not very good. And even more importantly, they know that people around them think that they are not very good. Okay? They know that they are mediocre. They also know that people around them think that they are mediocre. So which is a very sad place to be. Now, such a person will come into office cursing. Do I have to go to office? Yeah, I know that I am not very good at it. My people also think I am not good at it. Still, I need to go into office, attend office, and go back home with all his negative sentiments and pass his negative sentiments at home. So you will find many very sad software engineers. Like I said, 70% of the software industry is in this boat. Yeah. So actually, teachers are in a much better boat than them. If you look at the overall industry, teachers At least in the classroom, you will feel happy if you are a good teacher, because your students will appreciate you. If you are a good teacher, if you are not a good teacher, then you shouldn't be a teacher, right? But if you are a good teacher, that is one solace, because once you perform as a teacher, your students will appreciate you. The smile on your student's face really takes away all the negative feelings that you will have, right? So at least teachers are in a much better position than software engineers or people in other professions. That's how I would put it. I know it's not the complete answer, but hey, my answer to that is you're in a much better position compared to people in other industries. Then what else? What else? Harish, did you get any questions, or have I answered all questions?
I think you have answered all of them. Just a minute. Sir, one more question, at least in the beginning itself. Sir, why efficient feedback and not truthful feedback?
There is no such thing as efficient feedback. So any feedback should lead to efficiency. Feedback should lead to efficiency. Otherwise, feedback is not good feedback. If feedback is leading to efficiency, then it is good feedback. If feedback is going to lead to inefficiency, then it's not good feedback. So any feedback, by definition, has to lead to efficiency. So truthful, not truthful, it is the way in which you present the truth that matters. Okay, to you, it might be truthful, but how you present the truth is what makes it palatable to others. So you should make the truth sound not bad. Okay, we have to spend some time coaching these words. It all goes back to communication, your communication abilities. People think that they're truthful when they're actually being rude. Rudeness is different, truthfulness is different, and appropriateness is different. So you have to be, you should not be rude. You should be truthful, yet delicate when you handle such situations. Particularly while giving negative feedback, you have to be truthful, but at the same time, you have to be delicate. You have to understand the other person. You have to choose your timing also when you provide this. There are certain times in a person's life where the person is not capable of taking negative feedback. At that point in time, you pile up your negative feedback, then it's not very good, right? It's not in good taste. So timing and the appropriateness and your language, all of them count. Okay? Yeah. Next question. Any other question, Harish?
Yeah, there are many, sir. If the manager is biased or is nice towards someone, then how this issue can be detected and corrected?
Yeah. I did not go into errors in appraisal, right? Errors in appraisal itself is a huge thing. There are so many errors that can happen in appraisal. Managers can actually screw you properly, right? I have lots of very funny stories. Guys, I have been in this industry for more than, right, I have about 30 years of experience, right? I told, like Harish introduced me. And I've been screwed over by managers at least for about, if I recall, about 4 times in my life, right? Each of those 4 times came as a surprise. Each one of those 4 times, I told myself that this is never going to happen again, right? But then, hey, I have been screwed over 4 times. And some of them are hilarious. Some of them are, how shall I say, gruesome. And some of them are downright stupidity on my part. So you can't help. There's a statement that people leave their managers, not their companies, right? It's a very famous statement. And that's what happens. If a manager isn't good, you have to rely on written statements. See, one of my managers was a very dangerous specimen. Okay. To put it bluntly, if you have a desi manager, they are the worst kind. Desi managers means Indians who live abroad. Okay? Indians who live abroad make the worst managers. They have a chip on their shoulder about people in India. They think that people are remaining in India because they aren't very good. If they're good, they would have moved into their country of their choice. Okay, that's what they believe. Unfortunate, but true. So these are very bad men. Some of them make very bad. Some of them actually are good managers, but some of them make very bad managers. So when you understand the manager isn't very good, it is good to document everything, right? You have a conversation, you write that down as a mail and say, this is what we discussed. So that way you cover your ass much better, right? You have to be very careful about managers who are not very trustful. So you write everything down, you write everything in emails. That way you have some backup at least. Right? Everything needs to be documented, everything needs to be on paper. That's the way that you handle bad managers. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I think we'll take up one last question. Will performance management system work for academia? System like API is
Oh
fully
yeah,
flawed.
it works beautifully. Let me put it this way. An academic organization should have objectives very clearly defined. They should have a 5-year plan, on a 10-year plan, and a 20-year plan, right? And they should have an annual plan. They should know where they are going. Now, if they know where they are going, they can deduce as to what needs to happen this year. That should be very clearly communicated to all the employees. Now, based on this, each of the departments will have to set their objectives. Based on these objectives, each individual teacher or technical professional will have to choose their objectives so that it all fits into the department's objectives. Department objectives feed into the institution objectives. So once all these objectives are there in place, each person needs to be measured against the objectives. The sad part now, this is how the entire thing can be set up. It can work beautifully. I have a blueprint for that also. If you so want to, I can send you the blueprint, whomsoever is asking the question. But hey, for it to work beautifully, the management has to believe in this cause. Right? The management has to sincerely believe in this cause. Hey, this is how performance management will happen. And they have to be consistent in performance management. It should not be like, okay, I tried it out in one college. Let me give you a practical experience of trying it out. We tried it out in the college. So one of the management committee members walks into this performance appraisal meeting. The senior professor presenting. We had given PowerPoint slides as to how each person who is coming in presenting their stuff needs to present their stuff. Okay, there was a PowerPoint template also, and this professor, senior professor, had put in all the data and is presenting the stuff. So there's this management committee member who comes in, sits with his legs up, and then in all arrogance asks a couple of questions to the professor. The professor got so irritated, he closed his laptop and said, "You want to give me this one? Give me. Otherwise, I will quit and go. I don't want to. I don't want to look at your face." And he walks off. Right now, such a thing will happen. So it requires commitment from everybody. Right? It requires commitment from everybody, and a system which everybody believes in and is transparent. All these are very important terms. It has to be a transparent system that everybody believes in. Then only it will work. Yeah.
Sir, sorry that I have one more question.
Go ahead.
There is no system of providing feedback for seniors in government and educational institutions. Why it is so?
I answered this, Harisha, that the one is there is a system. It is not used. The government has a system provided. You're supposed to fill in a form, and this form has to be inspected. But unfortunately, everybody fills in the form blindly, and all the management looks, all the there's a clerk who will look in, hey, are all lines filled? All the lines are filled. Has the form been submitted on time? The form has been submitted on time. The boss signs on it and the incentives are released. There's a system, it's not being used properly. Right? There's a system for giving feedback. Everything is there, but people do not use it because they do not believe in it. Not that it is not there, it is there. But government organizations are changing now. Because of good policies, everything is changing, and soon questions will be asked. Tomorrow, or maybe a year from now, the question, why should performance management be there for academicians? Their performance should not be judged. It will be a hue and cry you will hear in 6 months to a year time. There will be strikes also organized. You look into it.
Thank you, sir.
Sudhir sir, sorry for interruption. Can I post some questions, sir? This is Apramaya from Bangalore.
Go ahead, sir.
Sir, thank you for the wonderful session. My question is simple, sir. We are working for government of Karnataka, where you are talking about performance management. And what is the problem, sir? Actually, before joining government of Karnataka, I was worked in MNC. And when I joined this Government of Karnataka services, and you can feel that there is a lot of differences in performance as well as how they will utilize their resources also. The only one thing is, if you perform well in some of the areas, the same resources will be pulled for every work, where we are feeling that we are screwed up because of the extra burden on us.
Correct.
Somewhere I can't say no for the higher officers also, sometime, and sometime I feel it is a overload on me, and sometime I feel I'm not giving sufficient time for my growth as well as for family also.
Yes, which is very true.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I understand your problem. Any organization, you will find that 20% of the employee, it's the same Pareto principle. 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people, which is true
Yes,
most organizations that I see. And all work is loaded on this 20% of the people, right? And
Yes.
that's what happens, right? You have to be careful. You have to understand
Okay.
what work you are making, and you should make this work, whatever work they're given you, much larger, right? And once again, it requires lots of tact and wisdom, Ramya.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very
Lots
much,
of
sir.
tact
Thank
and
you.
wisdom. There's no standard answer that I can give. If you
Yes,
talk to
sir.
me separately, maybe I can answer your particular query, right?
Yes, sir.
Unless I get into the particular situation, I'll difficult to
Yes,
answer.
sir. Yes, sir. I will get your contact details from the Arisha, sir, and I will
Please.
definitely mail you
Please.
my things, sir. Thank you
Please.
very much, sir. Thank you for wonderful session, and thank you for opportunity. Thank you, Arisha, sir.
Thanks, Apamay sir, and Sudhir sir. Shall we end the session?
Your call. I am done.
Thank you for the dynamic session, sir.
Thank you.
I really felt happy, and I'm thankful to you for helping me in finding good resource persons too. Both the sessions were absolutely insightful. Thank you, sir. Thank you on behalf of Government Polytechnic only,
Oh.
and on behalf of my colleagues, and on behalf of my participants. You have truly enlightened them. Thank you so much, sir. I seek your continuous guidance and support.
Of course.
In the coming
Thanks,
days. Maybe I'll meet you once I visit NI, sir.
Sure.
Sure.
Any help that anybody wants. See, I'm in such a phase in life where the only value that I can give is talking. If anybody asks me to talk, I'll come and talk. Thanks,
Thank you
Arisha.
so much, sir.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your kindness. Thank you so much. Dear participants, I have an announcement for you.